This program is brought to you by SMC Infrastructure, building a better world.
Hello, Mama Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic. And as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. On tonight's headlines.
Today I'm pleased to report that
Coronavirus tests that deliver results in 15 to 30 minutes are to be rolled out across the U.S. and in scores of poorer countries as health authorities worldwide try to get a handle on a disease that has now killed more than 1 million people. Tens of thousands of Californians are forced to flee their homes in the world-famous Napa and Sonoma wine regions as another new wildfire fanned by fierce winds leaves 3 people dead. And Cleveland prepares to host the first presidential debate between President Trump and his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden.
And humility. I accept.
A 4-legged robot walking the halls of the École des Mines in Nancy and answering to the sweet name of Scar, the marvel of technology is preparing to acquire abilities that will allow it to explore places too dangerous for humans. More than 1 million people have died from the coronavirus, according to a Johns Hopkins University tally, marking a grim milestone in the spread of the disease that has ravaged the world economy, inflamed diplomatic tensions, and upended lives. By 11:23 a.m. local time on Tuesday, the disease had claimed 1,867 victims from 33,282,969 recorded infections. The U.S. has the highest death toll with more than 200,000 fatalities, followed by Brazil, India, Mexico, and Britain. Masks, social distancing in shops, cafes, and public transport are now part of everyday life in many cities around the world. Mid-September saw a record rise in cases in most regions, and the World Health Organization has warned virus deaths could even double to 2 million without more global collective action. The death toll is expected to rise further as the outbreak continues to accelerate in many countries around the world, including the U.S. India is closing in on the U.S., crossing 6 million cases on Monday. In Southeast Asia, Indonesia and the Philippines have been particularly hard hit, while Malaysia, which saw early success in suppressing the disease, is battling a surge in cases in its Borneo state of Sabah. With over 1 million lives now lost to COVID-19 globally, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said that while the agonizing milestone is a mind-numbing figure, the world must never lose sight of each and every individual life. Let's listen in.
Our world has reached an agonizing milestone, the loss of 1 million lives from the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a mind-numbing figure. Yet we must never lose sight of each and every individual life. They were fathers and mothers, wives and husbands, brothers and sisters, friends and colleagues. The pain has been multiplied by the savageness of this disease. Risks of infection kept families from bedsides, and the process of mourning and celebrating a life was often made impossible. How do you say goodbye without holding a hand, or extending a gentle kiss, a warm embrace, a final whispered, "I love you"? And still there is no end in sight to the spread of the virus, the loss of jobs, the disruption of education, the upheaval of our lives. We can overcome this challenge, but we must learn from the mistakes. Responsible leadership matters, science matters, cooperation matters, and misinformation kills. As the relentless hunt for a vaccine continues, a vaccine that must be available and affordable to all, let's do our part to save lives.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced the distribution of 150 million rapid coronavirus tests ordered from Abbott Laboratories that are able to deliver a result in 15 minutes and display it in a similar format to a home pregnancy kit. Take a look.
Today, I'm pleased to report that we're announcing our plan to distribute 150 million Abbott rapid point-of-care tests in the coming weeks, very, very soon. These new Abbott rapid point-of-care tests are easy to use and return results within just minutes. You'll have a result at a maximum 15 minutes. No machine is required to process them. So in the old days when we just started this, you remember we'd go out and we'd have to find these massive laboratories with tremendously expensive equipment. Now we're down to something that you'll see that is really from a different planet.
Now, he said that the other 100 million tests would go to states and territories to assist them in opening their economies and schools. Experts have for months been calling for widespread adoption of this low-cost technology called antigen tests so that people can test themselves several times a week. Though the current approval is only for the test to be performed by a healthcare professional. The turnaround time offers obvious advantages for stemming the spread of the virus, but it also comes with a trade-off. They are less sensitive than the standard polymerase chain reaction or PCR tests and therefore more likely to return false negatives. Now, this is because the PCR tests use sophisticated lab equipment capable of detecting trace amounts of the virus genetic material. Now, the global death toll just passed 1 million, including more than 200,000 in the U.S. Now, this comes as U.S. infections are rising yet again. At the White House, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence warned and forecast an even higher number as millions of rapid tests go out to the states next week.
But with cases and positivity rising in 10 states, in the Midwest and the Near West, and with this historic advance in testing that's being distributed, 150 strong around the country, Mr. President, the American people should anticipate that cases will rise in the days ahead.
Some 120 million rapid tests for COVID-19 will be made available to poorer countries at $5 each, the World Health Organization announced, if it can find the money.
Last week, we reached an important milestone in which WHO issued the first emergency use listing for a quality antigen-based rapid diagnostic test, and we expect other rapid tests to follow. Today, I have good news. I'm pleased to announce that thanks to an agreement between WHO and partners here today and others, a substantial proportion of these rapid tests, 120 million, will be made available to low and middle income countries. These tests provide reliable results in approximately 15 to 30 minutes, rather than hours or days at a lower price with less sophisticated equipment. Volume guarantee agreements have been developed between two manufacturers and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which will make 120 million of these new highly portable and easy to use rapid diagnostic tests available over a period of 6 months. Currently, they are priced at a maximum of $5 per unit. These are already substantially cheaper than PCR tests, and we expect the price to come down.
Testing is at the forefront of the response. It is our first line of defense, critical for countries to track, trace, and isolate, to stop the spread of the virus and to ensure that we're not flying blind. The pandemic has exposed weaknesses in testing in health systems of all countries across the world. In low and middle income countries, however, it's vital that testing levels are dramatically increased with great urgency.
Being able to deploy quality antigen RDTs, rapid diagnostic tests, will be a significant step forward in enabling countries to contain and combat COVID-19. They're not a silver bullet, but hugely valuable as a complement to PCR tests, since although they're a bit less accurate, They're much faster, cheaper, and don't require a lab.
Testing gap in lower middle-income countries compared to high-income countries is staggering. It's 10 times less in lower and middle-income countries. Of course, having a test that can be simply used, that's high-performing, and that's affordable, can be a game changer in accelerating the number of tests that can be performed and also closing this gap.
We have these PCR tests that are available all over the world, and every country now has the ability to do PCR testing for COVID-19. Again, we cannot overemphasize enough how incredible this is in this rapid increase in the ability of countries to, one, get access to this test, and two, to have the facilities and the work staff to be able to do that. So many countries are doing the PCR test. The challenge with PCR testing in many countries right now is the turnaround time. There's a cost issue because the antigen-based tests are cheaper, certainly, and they're faster. But for the PCR test, it does take some time in some countries to get those results back. They can be done in hours, but oftentimes the results come back in days. And that poses a challenge to control efforts in the actions that are necessary.
In the United Kingdom, universities are trying to adapt to the coronavirus pandemic. Let's find out more from Erica Celestino from our EBC UK Bureau.
Universities in the United Kingdom adapt to COVID-19 pandemic as classes for university students resumed in mid-September, partly online and on campus. It is reminded for students and staff to maintain social distancing everywhere. Students have new things to adapt to. For some, classes online are a new thing for them to learn. It is challenging when you have to face something different and you're not used to it, as it is hard for home students to adjust in their own country's rules and regulations. It is also hard for international students, as some of them are far from their families and studying in a foreign country. Also, because of the difficulties of traveling in the midst of pandemic, many aspiring international students have been put out for the start of September academic year. Let's listen in.
I spent the pandemic away from my family, so the isolation was even harder for me, because I needed the human interaction as any other human being, and I found myself I was struggling with anxiety, depression at times, and I felt a little bit overwhelmed and ashamed as well, because I couldn't speak about it openly. I thought, okay, I have to be strong. Honestly, I don't miss how it was before, and it's crazy because you know what they say about you don't really appreciate something until you've lost it. And before, when I had all these facilities and the freedom to move and to do and to meet people, as an introvert, I used to spend more time with myself on my own, indoors. And now that, everything is so restricted, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I went out more. I wish I met more people.
We started the piece thinking that September was going to be about 50% of the population of international students, and we still think that's true. In some cases, different categories, different countries, as the situation evolves in each country, it changes, and we redevelop our sort of predictions. But I think 50% reduction for the September start, but January is looking positive. Applications were very high and very strong, but people are deferring when they wish to start. I think it's something of a myth, I'm afraid, that online is cheap. It's not. Good online is a really great option, and we put a lot of time and effort into building over summer, building on the work that we've done for the last 3 or 4 years through our Coventry University Online subsidiary. We've been building really great learning content, and therefore the quality of tuition is not going to be diminished, and therefore I think I'm afraid the price is for quality tuition. It may be a short introduction, a video introduction by the lecturer to introduce the topic, It may then refer to a YouTube clip and a piece of reading and a journal article and a group discussion. And I can make it so much more interactive that I can bring the subject to life through that online content. And it means that me as the tutor, I can go into my sessions as not the person who's going to simply deliver content and hope that it's transmitted, but I'm going to go in as the person that helps the students to make sense of their content and brings the subject to life.
Challenges that international students face is the blended mix of learning of virtual and then in-campus learning. As this may seem very new to a lot of international students coming to Coventry to study. But one way we've actually done to be able to combat that is we've created a lot of teams in terms of student union, advice center team, the well-being team, counseling team to be able to help students support them during their stay if they've got any challenges.
Some universities open their libraries, but students must reserve a place. Access to the library is one way. The route is peppered with hand sanitizer stations, and students must disinfect their workstation with the wipes provided. Student social lives are also limited, with many welcoming events held virtually, which is a challenge for new arrivals trying to settle in, according to George Okata, a member of Coventry's student body, told AFP. Britain has seen some 42,000 deaths in the coronavirus outbreak, the worst in Europe, and millions of people are under renewed local restrictions due to a surge in cases. Despite pessimistic predictions that foreign student numbers might collapse this autumn, applications body UCAS has reported a 9% increase in international undergraduate admissions, although EU applications fell 2%. However, this is not enough to relieve the pressure on universities, which have invested heavily in online learning and are also preparing for the end of the post-Brexit transition period in December.
Thank you, Erica, from our EBC UK Bureau. Moscow's mayor announced that school holidays will be extended as an anti-coronavirus measure as infections increase in the Russian capital. The move comes as Moscow has seen cases of COVID-19 rise swiftly in the second half of September, from around 700 a day to 2,300 today. Russia, which has seen the fourth largest number of cases in the world, registered a total of 8,232 new cases on Tuesday. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said in his blog that holidays starting next Monday will last 2 weeks instead of one in all the city's schools, citing growth in confirmed infections with COVID-19. Now this just in, up to 100 million additional doses of any eventual COVID-19 vaccines will be secured for delivery to poorer countries in 2021. Now this was announced by Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. Now, the announcement doubles the number of doses already secured from the Serum Institute of India, or SII, the world's largest vaccine manufacturer by volume, by Gavi and the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation, following an initial agreement last month. Under the agreement, SII will receive upfront capital to scale up its manufacturing capacity to produce candidate vaccines being developed by AstraZeneca and Novavax. The idea is for the manufacturer to be able to begin rolling out millions of doses as soon as a vaccine or vaccines receive approval from regulators and the World Health Organization. Israeli Health Minister Yuli Edelstein said that there was no way the country's second nationwide coronavirus lockdown would be lifted after 3 weeks as originally planned. Take a look. Now, he told public broadcaster Can there's no way that in 10 days we'll be lifting all the restrictions and saying it's all over, everything is fine. Israel imposed its second lockdown on September 18 after the coronavirus infection rate soared. It was originally scheduled to end on October 10. On Friday, the measures were tightened after the initial 8 days failed to bring down the world's highest infection rate per capita. Beyond shuttering schools and cultural events, the lockdown has closed the vast majority of workplaces, markets, and places of worship. Several fires in Northern California are threatening lives and property. 3 people died in the Zog fire, which started burning outside of Redding, and Wine County is on fire again, with more than 50,000 people in the area told to evacuate. Take a look.
Hours, particularly 2 new active wildfires that we're monitoring and putting a tremendous amount of resource and investment in. And that's the Glass Fire in Napa County and the Zog Fire in Shasta County. The Glass Fire grew substantially overnight, roughly 800 acres to 11,000 acres. A substantial number of structures have been damaged, wineries and other structures in and around the area. Familiar evacuation orders and challenge right now that's been made more acute because of overnight winds. Those winds will maintain themselves. They'll begin to dissipate later in the afternoon, stabilize overnight, which should help with our efforts to take advantage of those conditions and move to advance our containment efforts. But nonetheless, an active wildfire generating a lot of attention, appropriately so, a lot of consternation in and around that region that has been hit over and over and over again over the course of the last number of years. The Zog Fire up in Shasta County, also familiar territory, literally, not just figuratively. 7,000 acres so far have burned. Consider back to 2017 in the Carr Fire. This is in and around those areas. It's likely the Zog Fire may make its way into the August complex. I'll update you in a moment on the August complex. Remains the largest wildfire in terms of total acreage burned in California's history. But the Glass and Zog fires remain top of mind for us as we battle complexes all around the state of California. I'll remind you, a slide that's become very familiar in these presentations, 2019, less than 5,500 fires year to date, 157,000 acres burned. So far this year, 3.75 million acres burned, over 8,136 fires. Again, so far this year, 2020. Still remain vigilant with over 18,000 firefighters actively working these complexes, 27 complexes in total that are currently being suppressed, actively engaged in our suppression efforts. Some 7,100 structures destroyed, and those are the structures that we've been able to identify, recognizing that number. Thus, the plus sign you see there likely is to increase significantly. 26 fatalities, tragically, so far in this historic wildfire season.
Now, fire broke out on Sunday in the Napa region and then quickly quadrupled in size. Under an orange sky and sweltering heat wave, some of Napa Valley's best-known vineyards were consumed by an out-of-control blaze that raced through more than 35,000 hectares, according to State Fire Agency CAL FIRE. The Zog Fire, which has already torn through more than 30,000 acres, is expected to merge with the 900,000-acre August Complex Fire. Now, California has been battling massive wildfires for months, stoked by dry conditions, strong seasonal winds, and high temperatures. Now, Governor Newsom warned that California is only now moving into the peak of the wildfire season, with Santa Ana winds sweeping south toward Los Angeles, where another major heat wave is expected. The World Food Program said humanitarian conditions in South Sudan are rapidly deteriorating as the specter of hunger looms over the country, with conflict, torrential rain and flooding disrupting people's access to food. Take a look.
This water is going straight into the city and is displacing thousands of people. There's more than 50,000 people that have come from this region just to stay in this town and seek shelter in this town. WFP will need to support nearly 600,000 people this harvest season. And we know we have the tools for the job, and we know we have the people and the partners in the field. But we desperately need $58 million to provide immediately relief to communities, but also, importantly, to set them back on their feet as soon as they're able to return home.
Heavy rains have caused rivers to overflow levees, flooding vast areas and settlements along the White Nile and killing livestock, a primary source of livelihood in Jonglei State. More than 700,000 people across South Sudan have been affected by flooding since June, especially in Jonglei and Unity states where the flooding is most severe. Now, WFP said it provided food assistance to more than 500,000 people in flood-affected areas in July and August. WFP said despite a peace agreement, violence is still posing the greatest risk to food security. Families continue to be displaced, losing their homes, livelihoods, and loved ones. The program noted that most areas affected by conflict suffer from acute food insecurity. Since 2015, there has been at least 30 pockets of famine-like conditions related to fighting in Jonglei State, the Greater Pibor administrative area, as well as in Warrap and Lakes states. The WFP also said that the COVID-19 pandemic continues to undermine the already fragile humanitarian situation, adding that it was scaling up its support to meet the growing needs. The economic impact of COVID-19 has resulted in growing numbers of people requiring food assistance, as many as 1.6 million people not previously covered by WFP or any national assistance scheme. Two 10-month-old twins were among at least 11 people killed in landslides across an Indonesian city early on Monday. Several houses were buried in 4 separate locations around Tarakan on Borneo Island after hours of heavy rain and strong winds. 5 children were also among the dead, while 4 other people were rescued alive.
Sudah dapat warning dari teman-teman BMKG menginfokan bahwa di tanggal 27 sampai dengan tanggal 29 September itu akan terjadi anomali cuaca yang memang sangat ekstrim, hujan lebat dan angin kencang. Dan tadi malam betul terjadi pada pukul 12.00 waktu Indonesia Tengah, terjadi hujan yang sangat lebat sehingga mengakibatkan struktur tanah yang ada di dekat-dekat pemukiman, memang mereka tempat tinggalnya itu berada di dekat-dekat perbukitan, dekat-dekat bukit yang memang kalau kita lihat struktur tanahnya memang rawan sekali untuk terjadinya longsor.
Local Search and Operation Chief Amiruddin said among the victims we retrieved was the body of a father and his 10-month-old twin boys. At least 19 homes were damaged across Tarakan. Fatal landslides and flash floods are very common across the Indonesian archipelago, where seasonal downpours are frequent and relentless. Eagle News will be right back.
The South Luzon Expressway, a 36-kilometer long road that runs from Alabang to Santo Tomas, Batangas, connects several commercial and residential areas in the Greater Manila and the provinces of Laguna, Cavite, and Batangas. This will soon be extended all the way to the province of Quezon.
The New Era University, in its 45th year of excellence, discipline, and service to humanity, will offer online education all levels beginning this first semester academic year 2020 to 2021 through the NEU Virtual Learning Environment, or NEU VLE. New Era University offers a complete basic education cycle from kindergarten up to senior high school, offering all strands. NEU has 18 colleges, and 2 graduate schools. It also offers ALS and ETF. Best of all, NEU has the most affordable tuition fees among private universities in the Philippines. NEU is at Quezon City, the city of San Fernando, Pampanga, General Santos City, South Cotabato, Lipa City, Batangas, and Pinugay, Baras, Rizal. New Era University is under the stewardship of Dr. Nilo L. Rosas. What are you waiting for? Be part of the new normal. Enroll now. Classes start on October 5, 2020.
In Belarus, mass protests are continuing and so are the arrests. At least 100,000 people marched in Minsk and riot police responded with tear gas. Take a look. Azerbaijani and Armenian forces claim to have inflicted heavy losses as fighting raged for a third day on Tuesday over the breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh in a long-standing border dispute conflict in southwestern Asia. Attacks began on Sunday in Nagorno-Karabakh, a separatist region inside Azerbaijan, but controlled by ethnic Armenians. Urgent calls from world leaders for a halt to the fierce clashes that erupted on Sunday have gone unheeded by the ex-Soviet rivals. Both sides said fighting was continuing on Tuesday despite international pleas for a ceasefire. Now, neighboring Turkey backs Azerbaijan and blamed Armenian for the trouble. Take a look.
Bölgede Dağlık Karabağ'ın işgaliyle başlayan krize artık bir son verilmesinin vakti gelmiştir. Ermenistan'ın işgal ettiği Azerbaycan topraklarını derhal terk etmesiyle bölge yeniden barışa ve huzura kavuşacaktır.
The overall death toll rose to 67, including 9 civilian deaths, 7 in Azerbaijan and 2 on the Armenian side. Azerbaijan has not reported any military casualties, but Armenian separatist officials released footage showing burnt-out armored vehicles and the bloodied and charred remains of soldiers in camouflage it said were Azerbaijani troops. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Russia was monitoring the situation closely and that the current priority was to stop the hostilities, not to deal with who is right and who is wrong. Back in the U.S., President Trump's former campaign manager, Brad Parscale, has been hospitalized in Florida for psychiatric evaluation. Take a look. Now, police went to his Lauderdale home in Florida on Sunday after his wife reported he had guns and was threatening to hurt himself. Now, Parscale was demoted from campaign manager in July after a series of missteps. He quickly surrendered to officers under a Florida law that allows the temporary detention of someone impaired by mental illness.
I didn't do anything. Stand by back. Hey, we'll figure it all out, right? Don't worry about it.
Now, Cleveland is preparing to host the first presidential debate between President Donald Trump and his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden. COVID-19 restrictions will give the debate moderated by Fox News star Chris Wallace. A streamlined look with a smaller audience. Take a look.
So it's with great honor and humility, I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
Now, if you want to really drive him crazy, you say 12 more years.
Now, U.S. presidential debates are an important democratic ritual, but they really don't move a lot of votes, according to politics analyst Peter Lodge. Take a look.
Biden. Debates help voters feel engaged in the process, which is important. So every debate will do that. And debates are also an important democratic ritual, right? They're a way for us to participate. One thing debates do not do is change a lot of minds. And certainly in this campaign, polling finds consistently only as many as 10% of voters are undecided at this point. There's just not. If you look at the data, if you look at what political scientists have found, they find that debates really don't move a lot of votes. A lot of people are going to watch this debate. There's going to be a lot of yelling at Twitter. People are going to be screaming into the digital void. But ultimately, there's very little reason to believe that any one debate, any one statement, any one gaffe or rhetorical trip is really going to change very much, right? I think President Trump supporters are going to say, see, I knew it, he's strong, he's right, Vice President Biden is weak, he's hiding something. I think Vice President Biden supporters are going to watch the debate and say, see, I knew it, Biden is strong, he's calm, he's unifying, Trump is out of his depth, he's making it up, he's clearly corrupt. I think that both sides will declare themselves the winner. I expect Vice President Biden will want to talk a lot about President Trump's taxes, about unifying America, about just kind of calming stuff down, right? President Trump is going to want to talk about law and order. He's going to want to talk about his being persecuted. I think that all the polling I've seen, both the big national polls and also some more regional ones, find that people are really, really nervous. We're unsure. We have the pandemic. The economy continues to be bad at best. We've got all the civil unrest, there's climate change, there's fires. So we're anxious. And I think we're looking for someone to say, look, it's going to be okay, right? We got this. And regardless of the topic, I think both sides are going to be trying to say, we got this.
Singapore Airlines said it had scrapped plans for flights to nowhere aimed at boosting its coronavirus-hit finances after an outcry over the environmental impact. With the aviation industry in deep crisis, several carriers, including in Australia, Japan, and Taiwan, have been offering short flights that start and end at the same airport to raise cash. They're designed for travel-starved people keen to fly at a time of virus-related restrictions and have proved surprisingly popular. But Singapore's flag carrier, which has has grounded nearly all its planes and cut thousands of jobs, said it had ditched the idea following a review. The carrier has come up with alternative ideas to raise revenue, including offering customers tours of aircraft and offering them the chance to dine inside an Airbus A380, the world's biggest commercial airliner. Environmental activists had voiced opposition to Singapore Airlines launching flights to nowhere, with Group SG Climate Rally saying they would encourage carbon-intensive travel for no good reason. The airline said earlier this month it was cutting about 4,300 jobs, or 20% of its workforce, the latest carrier to make massive layoffs. The International Air Transport Association estimates that airlines operating in the Asia-Pacific region stand to lose a combined $27.8 billion this year. The group also forecasts that global air traffic is unlikely to return to pre-coronavirus levels until at least 2024. United Airlines reached an agreement with its pilots union to avert furloughs of 2,850 pilots amid a congressional stalemate on a new federal relief package, the two sides said on Monday. The agreement between the U.S. carrier and the Airline Pilots Association avoids pilot layoffs through at least June 21 in exchange for allotting fewer hours to pilots. However, United is still on track to furlough some 13,000 other workers as soon as October 1. These include flight attendants and staff in other airport operations. Under the $2.2 trillion CARES Act, enacted amid broad lockdowns in the U.S. due to the coronavirus, major airlines received $25 billion in payroll support under the condition that they not undertake involuntary job cuts through the end of September. But looming furloughs remain a worry for others throughout the airline industry as it endures a bruising industry downturn. Unions representing flight attendants facing looming furloughs are organizing rallies and posting pictures of their final flights on social media in an effort to stir action from Washington. K-pop sensation BTS are set for a multi-million-dollar windfall next month when shares in their record label go on sale, with a public offering valuing the company at over $4 billion. Take a look. The trailblazing Sept cemented their prominence in the world's biggest music market last month when their all-English track Dynamite debuted at #1 in the Billboard Hot 100. The band's label, Big Hit Entertainment, priced its initial public offering at $135,000 won, or $115. The firm said in a regulatory filing Monday the top end of its indicative price range, giving the agency a market value of $4.1 billion. Big Hit CEO Bang Si-yuk, who owns 43% of the agency, is worth $1.4 billion with the offerings, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. With the IPO, all 7 members of the group, currently the world's biggest boy band, are also set to become multi-millionaire stakeholders. Last month, the members were given 68,385 shares each from Bang, worth about $8 million at the offering price. During demand forecasting sessions last week, 1,420 institutional investors showed interest in more than 1,100 times the number of shares available, the firm said in their regulatory filing. BTS passionate fans, as well as retail investors, are bidding in hopes of securing at least one share. Big Hit will raise 962.6 billion won, according to the firm's regulatory filings, the largest South Korean IPO since Celltrion Healthcare raised 1 trillion won in 2017. A 4-legged robot walking the halls of the École des Mines in Nancy and answering to the sweet name of Scar. The marvel of technology is preparing to acquire abilities that will allow it to explore places too dangerous for humans to go. Take a look.
robochien, en tout cas mobile à 4 pattes, est la meilleure solution pour le rendre polyvalent dans des terrains très accidentés. Le robot humanoïde fonctionne, mais apporte d'autres contraintes de mobilité.
And finally, in our news, the United Arab Emirates announced it will launch an unmanned rover to the moon by 2024 as it seeks to expand its space sector. The UAE, a collection of 7 emirates better known for its skyscrapers, palm-shaped islands, and opulent mega attractions, is a newcomer to the world of space exploration, but quickly making its mark. In September of 2019, the oil-rich country sent the first Emirati into space as part of a 3-member crew that blasted off on a Soyuz rocket from Kazakhstan for an 8-day mission. And then in July, it launched an unmanned spacecraft from Japan's Tanegashima Space Center bearing the Hope probe destined for Mars in the Arab world's first interplanetary mission. The Emiratis now have their sights on the moon, according to the UAE's Vice President, Dubai ruler Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. Sheikh Mohammed also said that the rover, named Rashid after his father, who is credited with modernizing Dubai, will cover areas not yet reached in previous exploration missions. The project marks another first for the UAE, making it the first trip to the moon by an Arab country. Sheikh Mohammed said the lunar mission was part of the country's space strategy to build new knowledge-based and scientific capabilities. The Dubai Media Office said that the 10-kilogram rover will be an integral part of efforts to build the first settlement on Mars in 2117, one of the UAE's most ambitious plans. And before we close, we'll leave you with a word of hope. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.
This program was brought to you by SMC Infrastructure, building a better world.